You can do you can do the hand raise thing if you see it on the screen there. It should be, honestly, there we go. Subscribe to McDonald's is back up. There should be a hand raise button, Apollo. Honestly, Apollo might be, oh, there he is. I was almost worried that he might be thinking it's like going to be 15 more minutes until he can come do a debate.
Yo, what's up?
What's up?
So I'm gonna just post the screenshots for context, that we're talking about in the scans chat. And then I'm just gonna give my opening first if you're fine with it, and then you give your response in your little opening, and then we just get back to the substance without there being an ape fest, like for example you versus Hermes. That was like, my god. All right,
so it was my fault.
Okay, gotcha, cool. So let's just see what we disagree on. Okay, so this is the primary contention of the screenshot, right? So the primary contention within the screenshot is, wait, hold on, let me just check if someone...
I posted them in the pop-out chat so that anybody can see these screenshots that you say were your 2 points of contention.
Saint Diesel, so you're recording, right? Saint Diesel, that's my...
I'm recording.
I just want to make sure that there are more than one people recording. Okay, cool. So I think he's recording now. So in the screenshots, you had the disagreement on me saying that the Ravens paradox commits like some fallacy of conflating evidential and logical equivalence. You believe that to be false, of course. That was like one of the primary disagreements we had. So what I'm going to just basically do is I'm going to start off the debate by giving like a formally valid and sound argument in support of the claim that there's going to be like some sort of like conflation between these two things. I believe that the Ravens paradox commits what is called some sort of like it does not have any sort of like a probabilistic discrimination, which would make it the case that, like, for example, seeing a white shoe would be evidence for all Ravens being black. I can just give the formally sound argument. I'll just like read out the formally sound arguments, and then from there on, you can just tell me which of the premises you reject, right? It's like pretty simple.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, got you. So, just quite simply, my idea of like how premise one would look like is something like, well, clearly, if it is the case, right, that we have some sort of observation that confirms a universal hypothesis, then it must raise the probability of the hypothesis for it to be relevantly connected to the predicate class of that hypothesis, right? That's going to be like the first premise, right? This must raise the probability of the hypothesis for it to be relevantly connected to the hypothesis, for the observation to be very specific. Premise 2 is saying that basically, if I observe an arbitrary non-black, non-raven that is not relevantly connected to the distribution of ravens or blackness, then it would not actually raise the probability that all ravens are black. And then the conclusion for the argument is going to be something like, therefore, treating the non-black, non-raven as confirming that all ravens are black would result in a conflation between logical equivalence and evidential equivalence. I think the most contentious premise of the argument is going to be premise 2, because you're directly saying that it would in fact be the case that if I see a white shoe, for example, it's going to be evidence for the claim that all ravens are black. And I presume that by evidence, you're talking about diagnostic evidence and not just like non-diagnostic evidence, right? So I can just easily demonstrate as to why to not be diagnostic evidence, trivially speaking. So do you want the evidence for that specific claim, or do you have any other points you want to mention?
It seems like you're just confused about what it seems like you're genuinely just confused about what the Ravens paradox is saying. So what the Ravens paradox saying is, like, given a couple of premises, it's the case that it's going to follow that things like white shoes are going to be evidence for all non-black things being non-ravens, which is the same as to say all ravens are black, right? So I want to ask, just to make sure I'm understanding exactly where you're in disagreement with the main argument. Do you agree with not? Do you? Well, hold on. Let me finish this question here. What is it the case that you disagree with Nico's? Nico's is pronounced Nico's criterion, NICOD?
Kind of. Insofar as I would disagree on the presumption that the statement "all ravens are black" is the same proposition as the statement that you're talking about here. I think that to say that all ravens are black is not identical to the claim about the non-black, non-ravens. They're not identical propositions. They're logically equivalent, which is just to say, of course, just to clarify for the audience, right? Let me finish real quickly. just to clarify, they hold the same truth conditions, right? That means if one statement is true, which is going to be that if you have a raven, it is black, which can be translated into a universal claim, the contrapositive is true. They hold the same truth conditions, but I don't believe it is the case. Sorry, that the contrapositive would be the same proposition as the initial proposition. I don't think they're propositionally identical or express the same proposition.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding here. You don't think that all ravens are black expresses the same proposition as all non-black things are non-ravens?
Nope.
You don't think those express the same proposition?
I want to be clear on this, and I don't believe that. I want to be clear on this. What do you think determines the sameness conditions for a particular proposition, such that it would be the case that proposition A and proposition B would be identical?
Okay, so if it's the case that an implication is the contrapositive of another implication, I think that's a sufficient condition for it expressing the same proposition. Do you agree?
And you'd agree that what makes a...
Wait, answer me though.
Just to be clear,
no, answer me though.
By the way.
No, you don't? Wait, you don't think a
contrapositive
expresses the same proposition?
Relax. You're going to need an argument for the claim that if it is
that's
the
so
case...
dumb.
Oh, no, look at you, interrupting again, right? So
sorry, I don't want to mean to you. That's just crazy though.
I think it is crazy that you believe that your unjustified claim is going to be something which you ought to accept to be correct just from the get-go. But you're making the claim here that if you have an implication, okay, and you have a contrapositive, right, for the implication, then it would in fact be the case that this thing or these two statements are identical propositions. Is that a strict implication or a material implication? Which one is it?
It follows genuinely just logically. It's deductive, so it would be both. So both be the case that it's a strict implication because it's logically necessary, and also it'd be a material implication just because it's the case that the antecedent's only able to be true under the condition the consequent is true, and it's a biconditional too.
I'm going to focus on the strict implication part, right? So why would you believe that it is a strict implication in the sense where the conditional sentence...
It's just a rule of inference. It's just a rule of inference.
No, the rule of inference would be that they hold the same truth conditions, not that they're the same propositions. You understand this, right?
I want to make sure I'm understanding here. You think it's the case that from premise 1, P implies Q, that doesn't validly entail not Q implies not P?
I agree with that. So it doesn't mean they're the same propositions, though.
That would mean the same proposition.
What are you talking about?
You just disagreed with that like 30 seconds ago, though.
Dude, so all it means to say...
You even disagree with this, with saying it's the case that they're...
I'm going to lay the point out right now because you're very confused.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Gotcha, cool. So, insofar as what you're talking about here, all it means to say that they're biconditionally related is just to say they hold the same truth conditions, which means if there's a particular world in which one of the propositions is true, i.e. the implication, then it has to be the case that the contrapositive is true, and vice versa. And that's just to say that there is like some sort of like symmetric dependency relation there.
Now, and this is the reason you...
the existence...
Go ahead.
Wait, hold on, let me just finish.
I thought you were done.
The existence of a symmetric dependency relation is not the same as both props being the same proposition. So like, let's say hypothetically speaking, I'm going to give this one part because I've been speaking for a good while. Let's say the statement that Sinthe debates Hermes and Apollo debates Hermes are logical equivalent. It doesn't mean they're the same proposition. And all it means to say they're logical equivalent is just to say that they hold the same truth conditions. That's it. Nothing else.
Okay, so look, that's fine if you want to give your like alternative idea of what it means for propositions to be sorry, I burped. The same proposition. That's whatever. If you want to give your like own notion of that, as long as you understand that in the situation where one is true, the other is always true, and vice versa. When one is false, the other is false, vice versa. As long as you agree with that, then it's the case that's good enough for understanding that they are, at the end of the day, if one hypothesis is proven, if something's evidence of one hypothesis, that would mean it's evidence of the other. Do you agree?
No, because first and foremost, wait, just to be clear, so before we get on to whether or not to automatically count as evidence for one, I want to make it clear that are you willing to drop the point that they're not the same proposition, and if not, we can just go into your account of identity.
I think you're just trying to avoid the real topic of conversation here, and it's kind of obvious.
I'm not avoiding the topic.
But what I think is under... I can answer your question
if you like. You made the fundamental claim about identity.
Let me know when you're ready.
I want to focus on that claim first. So
I
made specifically.
Yeah, go ahead. I thought you were done and you were asking me a question.
I wasn't.
You want me to answer
actually. You were like over talking, so you're not even able to understand. I was not finished talking.
So you're not finished talking at the end of your question. I didn't understand that. I was confusing you.
Emphasize on my words. Yeah, it's called intonation. So you made a claim.
Intonation.
Right, that it is the case that these two things are the same propositions, an implication and the contrapositive are the same propositions, right? So
right.
If you want to drop that claim, we can agree that you fucked up on the first point, and we
This
can
is so
focus on
pathetic.
why it would not
He's
be
already
evidence
getting upset.
automatically. I'm not upset. I'm just pointing out that he fucked up.
Okay, you're already upset. But look, lock in, because it doesn't matter. If you want to say that, I fucked up there. I disagree on my account of what it means for two propositions to be the same. Them being logically equivalent is the same as them being the same. That means the same thing in my mind. Because one entails the other, and one is always true under the condition the other is true.
Are you going
and
under
vice
Leibnizian
versa.
law of identity?
That to me means they're the same. But you want to talk about some other random shit instead of talking about the substance.
Okay,
so I'm gonna lock you in on this. Don't move off. Hold on, excuse me. Don't move off. So if you want to talk, excuse me, just a moment. So if you agree that it's the case that one is true only under the conditions the other is true. Like it's not the case that you think they're the same, whatever that means, but you think it's the case that P if and only if, this other claim, right? P implies Q if and only if, not Q implies not P. That's sufficient for it being the case that evidence of one is evidence of the other. Now you said that's not. You said it's not the case that's sufficient. So I'll explain to you why. You asked why, I'm going to tell you. So if you think it's the case that this is evidence for a claim and some other claim is logically entailed by that, then it's also evidence for that claim that logically entails it, right? So if it's the case or that it's logically entailing. So for example, if I say something like, I believe that P implies P or Q, for example, obviously it's the case P does imply P or Q. So if I have evidence for P, you would agree then I do have evidence for P or Q, right?
If you have evidence for P, then you do have evidence for P or Q. Oh yeah, of course, definitely. Because inclusive disjunction, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And additionally, you'd say something like, in a case where P, if and only if Q, if I believe that, and I believe I've got evidence for P, that would also mean I've got evidence for Q so long as P, if and only if Q, right?
Okay, cool.
Right. So you do agree then that since it's the case, P implies Q, if and only if, not Q implies not P. If I have evidence for P implies Q, that means I have evidence for not Q implies not P. Agreed?
If you have evidence for the contrapositive, then you have evidence for the implication. Is what you're asking me?
That's what I just said.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Of course, I've said that numerous different times.
But you just said if it's the case that I listen to this. If it's the case that I believe, if you acknowledge that P, if and only if Q, and I've got evidence for P, that would mean I have evidence for Q. But just replace
Here's
P and Q there. Hold on, one moment. I'll walk you through it. It's almost there. It's almost. Okay. I'll walk you. It's not very complicated. You agreed for P implies Q, or sorry, P if and only if Q. You agreed that having evidence of P gives you evidence of Q. Now I'm just asking you replace P with P implies Q, and replace Q with not Q implies not P.
Not Q.
Replace those two because you do think it's the case. You do think it's the case that if and only if the other, right? You do think it's the case that an implication if and only if it's contrapositive. You agree with that, and so by what you've already committed to, if it's the case you have evidence for the proposition P implies Q, then you have evidence for its contrapositive by what you're already committed to.
Okay, so what I'm saying here specifically is what I agreed on is P, like if you have evidence for P, then you have evidence for the disjunction P or Q. Not that if you have evidence for P, then you have evidence for the implication P implies Q, because of course it could have an implication such that the antecedent is true and the implication is false, especially if the consequent of the conditional sentence is false, right? So T, gotcha. So I'm just clarifying that was what I agreed on, not specifically the point of whether or not it is the case.
You're forgetting the other thing you agreed on.
Just let me finish. All right, so I'm telling you right now that that's what I agreed on. I agreed on evidence for P being trivially evidence for P or Q, not that evidence for P being trivially evidence for P implies Q. So then now to get to the point I was going to mention before you try to run away from it, right? So I was going to mention the point which is simply that you could have, right? Let's say you have like some given statement like, okay, all ravens are black, right? And of course that would obviously entail that non-raven, if there is to be something which is non-black, it is not a raven, right? Obviously, that would be the case, right? Now, it is not the case that automatically speaking, if you see, for example, a white shoe, right, it is true to say, or sorry, it would actually be the type of thing which is evidence for all ravens being black, because you could stipulate a hypothesis or some sort of hypothesis such that it would be the case that the negation towards the proposition, which is that not all ravens are black, i.e., there's some sort of like raven out there which is purple, for example, is true in conjunct with the existence of a white shoe. And that particular proposition, which is going to be something which is opposing the proposition that all ravens are black, is going to be the type of thing, of course, which is going to be incompatible with the point you're making currently. If you're trying to what's going on here.
So I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. You think that I can have evidence for the claim all ravens are black without having evidence for the claim all non-black things are non-ravens. Is that right?
Repeat that one more time, please.
Right. So you think it's the case that I can have evidence of the claim that all ravens are black without having evidence of the claim that all non-black things are non-ravens. Does that correctly describe your view?
I'm agnostic on whether or not that's a logical possibility given how you phrased it, but the point
You're
I was making
agnostic?
specifically, just to make it very clear, just to make it very clear because you oddly phrased or worded it, the
He
point
doesn't
I'm
know.
making specifically is that, for example, if I see a white shoe, right, which is not a raven, which is black, right, so it's going to be a non-black, non-raven, right, so if I see a white shoe, for example, the existence of a white shoe, right, that would be compatible with the statement that not all ravens are black. You'd agree with that, right?
Say that again.
So the statements that are the fact of there being a white shoe, right? That is compatible with their existence, some sort of like raven that's purple, correct? You'd agree with this, right?
Yeah, of course. So something can be evidence for a claim without being something that's like incompatible with negation.
So let's say I have a hypothesis and I call the hypothesis blur. And blur is just any hypothesis which negates the proposition that all ravens are black. And the blur basically stipulates two things.
So it's not the case all ravens are black?
No, let me just finish real quick, right? So the hypothesis blur, which negates and opposes the hypothesis that all ravens are black, which is a universal claim, it stipulates two things. And one of these things is that a white shoe exists. Do you think you observing the white shoe would raise the probability of the claim that all ravens are black, even though that's equally expected under the negation hypothesis called the blur? Yes or no?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding the claim here. You're saying blur is supposed to mean the negation of the claim that all ravens are black, correct?
It's just something which negates the hypothesis, yeah.
Okay. So blur then would be the same as the hypothesis. It's not the case all ravens are black, right?
Not syntactically, but semantically, that's an entailment.
Okay. So then you're asking me then if a white shoe is evidence for it being the case that it's not the case all ravens are black?
So blur, the hypothesis blur, one of the conditions, this is like a necessary.
It'd be evidence against blur. A white shoe would be evidence against blur.
I'm asking, so you think it is evidence against blur, correct?
Right, that's right.
Okay, and do you believe it is evidence against blur, even though it is the case that while white shoe existence is a necessary condition for blur to be true?
It isn't.
Blur, by definition, stipulates that a white shoe exists. That's the whole idea.
No, it doesn't. Blur just stipulates it's not the case all ravens are black.
Blur is the hypothesis which denies that all ravens are black and stipulates that there's a white shoe.
No, you're adding this next part. You're adding this next part in. So I'm asking you just to clarify here. You said earlier blur is equivalent to the claim. It's not the case all ravens are black. You said yes to this.
I said that it is going to be semantically entailing.
As in it means the same thing. Oh, now you're saying it's semantically entailing it.
Just to be clear, when you're talking about the negation hypothesis, you're talking about a hypothesis which would entail the falsehood of a given proposition, correct? Now, this case scenario that I'm talking about here, we have a hypothesis which denies the proposition that all ravens are black. And in this hypothesis, it stipulates that there exists a white shoe. That's going to be a necessary condition for this hypothesis to be something which is true, to have any sort of veracity. Now, if that is the case, which it is, of course, by definition, then if you observe a white shoe, it is not going to be evidence for the claim that all ravens are black, because the conditional probability of blur being true is going to be 1, and that should be the same for even the other hypothesis that's been negated.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm understanding here. Blur is equal to it's not the case all ravens are black, and there's a white shoe.
If it is equivalent to this in what sense? Semantically, syntactically, like what specifically?
Oh my god. Look, I'm just asking you if that's the same as blur.
I wouldn't say it's the same as it, but I think that's a necessary condition for blur to be true.
Is it a necessary and sufficient condition?
It's not a sufficient condition, because blur being true is not going to be sufficiently justified based on the fact of there being a white shoe, but it's going to be based on the fact that there's a white shoe.
But that's not what I said.
Some other conditions, including the condition of the all ravens being black hypothesis being false. So it's going to be a multiplicity of conditions which formulates a sufficient condition.
Can you list all the other conditions then? Because right now the only ones I've heard are it's not the case all ravens are black and there is a white shoe. What are the other ones?
Let's say the blur hypothesis is something which is conceptually opaque. So that means I cannot actually list all the conditions.
Okay, then I have no idea whether or not it's evidence for it, so that's kind of stupid. But can I ask my questions
So wait,
again? Because hopefully we can get
wait,
clear on
you have
this. I've
no
answered it.
idea
Excuse me.
the evidence
Don't
for it?
interrupt. Don't interrupt. Don't interrupt. You just said it's conceptually opaque. I have no fucking clue. If I have no clue whether or not white shoes are going to be evidence for or against it, now I want to ask you some questions because I answered all of yours. So the question I got for you, because it kind of seems like we didn't get a really clear answer here. So I want to ask you, if I have evidence for the claim all ravens are black, would I also have evidence for the claim all non-black things are non-ravens? Yes or no?
I don't agree with that claim, no? Because of the reason
No.
just presented a while ago on the table. Yeah.
No. So here's the thing. You said that in a situation where I have evidence for P, and also it's the case that P, if and only if Q, that would mean I have evidence for Q. Agreed?
I'm agnostic on that claim. I believe that it is the
You'd have
case
to
that
deny it, actually.
the implication. Yeah, so just to be clear on this, right? Because your first question was you asking about like if I believe that I have an evidence for P implies Q indicates I have an evidence for not Q implies not P. Of course, I don't believe that. I believe, however, that it being true that P implies Q entails not P, not Q implies not Q, not P, of course, because of the contrapositive inference rule or whatever. But that's not the same as like talking about evidential equivalence, right? So you're presupposing that it follows necessarily from logical equivalence between two particular propositions that it would in fact be the case that there would in fact be evidential equivalence between these two propositions. And of course, that would not be the case. I can give like pretty easy philosophical intuitive examples which demonstrates the falsity of the given claim. But you can ask your other questions, and then from there on,
Really?
we can just progress the
Can you?
conversation. Mhm.
So you think there are philosophical examples that will trivially demonstrate the falsity of the claim I just made? That if you have, I want to make sure I'm understanding this. The claim you
Yeah.
can demonstrate the falsity of is in a situation where P, if and only if Q,
Mhm.
you could get. If I'm saying there's evidence for P, that would also mean there's evidence for Q. You're saying that no, you
Mhm.
disagree with that. And you think there are counterexamples.
Yeah, I can give like some philosophical intuitive
Okay.
examples, just based on my intuitions. Okay, so pretty sure we've talked about like your views on metalogic, and you use like this sort of like argument for LNC based off the idea that if it is the case that dialectism is true, it's going to result in some sort of like problem in termination, correct? Some
Is
termination
that
problem.
that's your example?
Well, that's going to be leading up to the example, right? So the idea is simply
Oh, can you just
the
give
same
it?
argument that one. Yeah, so I'll give you an example, right? So the argument you deliver as to why it is the case that the LNC is true is not identical to the argument that you use for why the LEM is true, and they're both like going to be the types of things that are logically equivalent, right?
So what's the example you're giving?
So the example that I'm talking about is like so the evidence that you utilize for the LNC. Let's just focus on like how I would justify the LNC, right? So the principle of expulsion, right? That would be something which justifies the LNC insofar as it demonstrates trivialism being an entailment from denying the LNC. On that argument, which could be evidentially relevant in demonstrating the LNC, is not an argument that would be evidentially relevant to demonstrating the LEM intuitively, even though it is the case that the LEM and the LNC are both logically equivalent.
So I want to
That
make
was
sure I'm
like really
understanding
easy.
here.
Uh-huh.
The example you're giving is you know that the LNC is true if and only if the LEM is true. Is that correct?
Yeah, that means that if the LNC is true, that the LEM is true, and vice versa, because they're both logically necessarily true given the axioms of classical logic. Yeah.
And you have evidence for the LNC. Is that correct?
Yeah, the evidence would just be the deductive argument favoring the LNC, like some sort of like intuitive thing which points out that
But
not
you don't
granting the
think that gives
LNC.
you evidence for the LEM?
I don't see. No, why would it give me evidence for
Okay,
the
so
LEM?
it's not clear to me that even is an example. I don't have that intuition. My intuition is actually the opposite. My intuition is that if it's the case that I show that one of the set of the laws of logic are true, that actually does make me think even highlier of the other parts of that set of the laws of logic, the three classicals, right? LEM, LNC,
Mm-hmm.
what is the law of exclusion, the law of non-contradiction,
Mm-hmm.
and the if fucking what am I saying? What am I blanking on here?
The Morgan's law.
LNC is
Like the
LNC
reversion
is
to that.
when. Hold on, let me fucking think of this. I want to make sure I get this correct because I'm blanking. Law of non-contradiction, the law of the
Mm-hmm.
excluded middle. It's been so long since I thought about this. And so one of them excludes fuzzy logic, this law of the excluded middle. One of them
Yeah.
excludes contradictions. What the hell am I blanking on?
But the point is, supervaluationist logic is compatible with granting both the
Oh,
L and
law of
the
identity is what it is. Is that right?
yeah, but I'm saying specifically that, like, insofar as like what are you talking about here? Like, someone can just like not like even like someone like the char, for example.
Oh,
He
thank you,
grants
CX in
the L.
chat. Law of identity. I'm
Okay,
glad I was right on that one. Oh fuck, I was like
okay,
on the
gotcha.
edge of my seat.
So I was just going to say that, like, insofar as what you're talking about here, like you talk about understanding the intuitions and so forth, but there are plenty of debaters or even philosophers who actually would grant the LOI, like the law of identity, but not grant the LNC and the LEM, or they would not grant the LEM, for example. Like I
Did
know
you say? Wait, did
Detroit.
you say it was De Morgan's law was the third one?
No, I said the Morgan's law would be the fourth. I thought you were like thinking of a fourth law or something, because I never expected you to
Huh?
forget the LOI. Yeah.
I think we all know what's happening here, Apollo. So, like, you missed it. But lock in. I'm gonna ask you this question again. So,
I'm locked in, dude.
you
You're the person that
your
locked in because
example,
of the LOI. Yeah.
you didn't understand the debate. So, Apollo, you think it's the case that you know that the LNC, if and only if the LEM, but you didn't have evidence. You had evidence for the LNC, but that doesn't give you evidence for the LEM. Now, that was supposed to be your example. So I'm going to ask you again, since that example is not intuitive to me, are there any ones that are more clear, like just
You
folk
got the first
examples
part
in
incorrect, by
everyday?
the way. You got the first
No, I
part
didn't.
incorrect. The
No, I
conditional
didn't.
sentence is not to say that if I know the LNC, then I know the LEM. The conditional sentence is if the LNC is true, then the LEM is true. So you kind of fucked up. But
No,
try again.
the thing you agreed to earlier was I know the LNC, if and only if the LEM. That claim. You
No, no,
agreed with
no.
this
But
earlier.
my point was to say, and I've
Okay.
clarified this, and I've been pretty clear on this on the recording. I said specifically that if the LNC is true, then the LM is true, because my whole point here is to demonstrate that logical equivalence does not automatically entail evidential equivalence. And so the whole idea
Of
is
course it does,
I
bro.
demonstrated an instance of two propositions or principles of classical logic, which are going to by definition be logical equivalent. However, they're not evidentially equivalent given my epistemic commitments. Now we can go again. So what's your question you have to ask, if it is relevant?
Right. So my question is very simple. I want to make sure that we can understand this. So, do you agree that in a situation where you have evidence of something's logical equivalence, you're saying you don't think it's the case that you have evidence of the other thing, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
not
So,
necessarily.
if I have
You can have a classification scenario in which you have
you
two
said not
propositions which
necessarily,
are logical equivalents. Yeah, the whole point is me denying the strict implication conditional
and
sentence that you made
and
originally.
by not necessarily you
Mhm.
mean under like the modal scope or the modal variety there being the logic, just the logical modal
Yeah,
scope.
of course. Yeah, like it's logically possible for there to be two logical equivalent sentences such that there is data D, which is evidence for P, but that same data would not be evidence for Q despite P and Q being logically equivalent.
But your example of this was an LNC and LEM case.
Yeah, so you can just use the propositional variable p for the LNC and the propositional variable q for the LEM, and then you just plug in the variables right there, and the same argument just applies and works through, right? So it doesn't make a
No,
difference.
so it doesn't, because in the situation where you know that the LNC, if and only if the LEM, and you have evidence for the LNC, you would have evidence for the LEM. Do you have any other examples that make it intuitive
That begs
in
the
your
question.
favor, not against your favor?
Wait, I don't think that is intuitive because I've demonstrated why there are a multiplicity, or I guess a lot of people, at the very least, good amount of people and philosophers who would agree on the law of identity but be a dead atheist, or they would agree on the law of identity and the
Right, but
LNC
those people
and
are
not
people who are
agree.
denying the laws of logic, and you're
Let me just
talking about
finish that.
logical necessity.
Let me finish, right?
Is it
Because the
logically
point I'm making,
possible those people are correct, Apollo?
remember, stop spreading, right? You're spreading the fuck out, right? So I'm
Is it
talking
logically
specifically about
possible
something.
those people are correct?
Remember, we're doing, just relax, dude. We're having a good conversation, right? So I'm talking about
Well, I'm
intuition,
gonna ask you the
intuitive
same question
nature,
again.
the philosophically. What you're contesting here is if I can present a philosophical intuitive counterexample. Now, if I'm appealing to a plethora of case scenarios in which you have philosophers who will agree on one or two of the laws of logic, but not all three laws of logic, then there's going to be some levels of intuition favoring what I'm saying currently. And that's the whole point of what I was talking about there. So the preponderance of intuitions would favor me currently, yeah.
Is it logically possible people who are dialecteists are correct?
If it is logically possible,
Right. Is it logically possible that dialecteists are correct?
given classical logic,
Given what you mean by logically possible.
okay, so given what I mean by logically possible, it would be the case that like depends on which version of dialectism, if it's like the strong version or the
That
weak
there are
version.
true contradictions.
Okay,
Is it
so if there are
logically
true
possible that there are true
contradictions,
contradictions,
that would not
Apollo?
be logically possible. Given, yeah, no, that would not be logically possible.
Okay. So is it
Hmm.
logically possible for the LEM to be false?
If it is logically possible for the element to be false, I think so. I'm agnostic on if it is logically possible. I think that it is going to be the case that given some sort of like case scenarios where you have fuzzy cases, you could make an argument in favor of the idea that supervaluationist logic is necessary for it to be the case that
So
the
I want to
LEM
make
is
sure I'm
universally
understanding here.
applicable.
You
Yeah,
think
you
the
know what
LNC
evaluation
is
is logic
true?
is, right?
You think the LNC is true if and only if the LEM is true. You think that's logically entailed. You also think it's the case the LNC is logically necessary, but you don't think it's the case the LEM is logically necessary. Is that true?
That's not the point I'm making currently. I'm
Is
saying I'm
all
like
is
agnostic
everything
right
I
now.
just
So
said they're
the point,
true?
no, actually. So the
Which thing
point
did I
that
say
I'm
was
really
false?
focused on. So the part that you basically, I'm not sure if you're assuming this, but what is implied by the
Oh, you're
question is
not sure
that
if I'm assuming.
there's,
What did I say that was
just
false, Apollo?
dude. Relax, dude. Remember,
What
you
did I
asked me
say that was
questions,
false,
but never made
Apollo?
an explicit claim. You asked me a question, so the questions would not be propositional, so you would not be directly affirming something. So I'm making the point that
I
there might
asked
be
you
some
if any of
premises.
those three claims were false. Which of those three
Okay,
claims are false,
so
Apollo?
the claim that there would not be a logical contradiction if you were to deny the LEM is something which I'm basically pointing out I never made. I never made the claim that there
I
is
didn't
or there's
say
not
that.
a
I'm gonna
logical
go through it
contradiction.
again. I'm gonna go through it again, Apollo. You think it's like? Tell me if you think this. Do you think it's the case that the LNC is true if and only if the LEM is true? Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay. And you think it's the case that it's not logically possible for the LNC to be false? Is that correct?
of course.
And you think it is logically possible for the LEM to be false? Is that correct?
No,
No, that's not correct.
I don't believe it is logically possible for the LEM to be the type of thing which is false because I've already stipulated that
Good
they're
job.
logically equivalent.
You said
So
earlier you
that
thought
basically was
otherwise.
really unsuccessful. So I'm going to focus on the point that we're talking about because you want to run away from
You
that
said
point, right?
earlier you
So
thought otherwise.
yeah, just take a chill pill, man. So we're
Is
talking
that
about
true? Just
the
to make sure we're
philosophical
confirming
truth of
this. Earlier
example.
you did say
Right, so
otherwise. Is that true, Apollo?
hold on, just calm down. Right,
Apollo,
because we're
earlier did you
talking
say
about the
otherwise?
intuition part, and what we're talking about here is whether or not it was
See,
philosophically intuitive or not. If you want to
I think
just,
you're
if you
realizing
want to
you're
just
kind of
come to some
fucked.
sort of,
You're kind of a little bit fucked.
stop
You've
doing
been
it.
rude the entire debate, but at this point
Says the
you're
guy
really,
who
really
forgot what the
fucked.
LOI actually is, and yet to get
You were
reminded by the
getting
general
baited. You
audience.
forgot what it was,
You were
retard.
literally fucking
You
stunlocked
said
to
it
the
was De
point you forgot
Morgan's
one of the
law.
laws of
You said it was De
logic.
Morgan's
That was
law.
crazy. I said De Morgan's law as a means of
you
demonstrating
thought De
the
Morgan's
fourth
law was the
law
LOI.
because I expected you to
You
know
thought
what
De
the
Morgan's law
LOI
was the
is.
little. So look, Apollo, what
You
I'm
think I
gonna
said
tell
that De
you
Morgan's
is
law
that
was the third law, you dumb fuck?
you are backed into a
This
corner.
is just
There's
a bad
nowhere you
fucking
can
look
go.
again. Like every single
There's
time, get grown the
nowhere
fuck
you can
out,
go.
right? So
There's nowhere
let's
you can
focus
go
on
at
the
this
point
point,
you're talking about
Apollo.
here, right? So the
What
point
you
you're
can
talking
do
about
is you
here.
can try your best to address this
I'm
directly.
trying to get
Did
you
you
to
say
start the
earlier
conversation right
that
now.
it's
So
logically possible for the LEM to be false?
I have never made that claim, and we can
You
go
never
into
made
it.
that claim in
So
this entire
I
debate.
made the claim specifically on my epistemic attitudes towards if it is the case there's a direct logical contradiction that should be formally expressed from denying the LEM. Not that if it is the case that there would not be a logical contradiction, or if it is the case it
This
is
is
not
so
logically
humiliating for
necessary to
you.
quantify. Yeah, it is humiliating that I'm wasting
That
my time
anime
with you
girl
on
profile
something
picture is
that
appropriate because you are bitch
so I'm
made,
trying to
bro.
get you
So
on.
look,
I'm
I'm
trying to
gonna
get
go
you
ahead.
back on
Yeah,
track
you
right now,
actually
right? So
genuinely, you go. You go. This is like
this is
drowning
actually
you.
just
This
so
is drowning.
embarrassing.
Go
Like
ahead.
it's just crazy that every single time we have another debate, you just perform even more embarrassing than the previous debate, right? So
Look at how mad
we're
he's
gonna do
getting. You're
this, guys,
barely
right? We're gonna do this
comprehensible.
together,
When you
right?
get more
So
mad, it's harder and harder for people to understand you, Apollo.
I'm definitely
You
angry
get
right now. I
more
pretty sure we
mumbly.
got a Dr. Bill, a freaking Dr. Phil cosplayer in the fucking voice column. God damn it, dude. Holy shit. So we're gonna focus on what's going on here, right? I don't care about the Dr. Phil rhetoric where he's trying to psychoanalyze the
Blah blah
person's
blah
emotion,
blah 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 blah. Stuck out of
evade the
line. The
argumentation.
motion. Blah blah blah.
So look at me right now. I'm just gonna keep on dominating this
Yeah,
conversation with
but
the
you're not
volume.
really dominating because
No,
you're
I'm
barely
telling you right now.
comprehensible.
Let's go back to the points because you're losing on the rhetoric right now, pretty badly, like you
You're
did the last
doing
time.
so good on rhetoric, Apollo. You're killing
Of
on the
course, you
rhetoric.
definitely am, which is why I
You're
beat you
fucking
up
crushing it,
probably.
bro.
The polls are like destroying you and shit. So I'm telling you
Yeah,
that
man, you're doing a
you'd
killer.
agree, of
Are
course,
you? By
that
the way,
there's
can
a
I ask you really quick? Are you
distinction.
gonna upload this one
Wait,
too?
no, don't right away. You'd agree that there's a distinction between logical
Sure, bud.
equivalence and evidential equivalence, correct?
Yes, of course. But now, can you answer my
Okay, got
question?
you. And the claim you're making right now,
Look
don't
at
run
you
away,
running
because this
away.
is
I
a
just
following,
directly
it's a
addressed your
following
question.
up
Now you're trying to
question.
accuse me of
I
running
asked you
away.
question number one to follow
My
up with a
question is
different
just, will
response.
you upload
But
this?
you want to run away from the dialogue tree and basically
I want to run away.
move the
You're
football.
admitting to doing a dialogue
What you're
tree? Why
doing
would you
right
do
now, just
that?
want to run away from the dialogue tree right now. So
I'm running
I'm
away from
telling
the
you,
dialogue tree.
this
You
whole
got me, bro. Now, can you answer my question?
bro, you're being a track star right now. God damn it, bro. So look, I'm
Right. So you
telling you
think I'm
here
running, but
that
I just directly
insofar
answered your
as
question. You're dodging mine.
yes, but then at the same time, we're directed disengaging from the responses, which follows up from your response to
Cool,
my
bro.
question. So that would
Okay,
give me a
look, you can
runaway.
ask your second question. I
Okay,
understand you're not
so
going to
I'm
answer
trying to
mine.
get back to the point. So I'm gonna get back to the point that I was making, or the dialogue tree at the very least, right? So
The dialogue tree.
I'm saying that the claim that you're talking about here, right? And I want you to walk with me. Don't be lost in this jargon jungle, right? So I'm telling you here that insofar as the claim that you agree that they're distinct, What your position here currently is, of course, if you forgot, I'm just going to remind you, of course, that it is the case that one entails the other. That means if there are two statements which are logically equivalent, then necessarily it would be the case that evidence for one would necessarily be evidence for the other. And the reason why I'm repeating your point is because of a repeated issue of mistracking your own points, right? So now this refers to your pea-sized brain on what your point is. I'm asking you right now, that insofar as the examples I've given and the appeals to different philosophers that I've given in this conversation,
This is why Apollo
would
has
you
to be
agree
interrupted. He
that
just
could be
rambles
evidence for
forever.
the intuitions part? Yes or no?
No. So look, we're gonna go ahead and talk about the thing that I just said, and you're gonna probably dodge it again. So Apollo, this is very simple. What I'm gonna ask you is, in a situation where you know P, if and only if Q, and you have evidence for P, you don't have evidence for Q, can you give me an example of one of those types of cases that you think is intuitive to most people?
The case that I was talking about indexed to philosopher's position, that's what I think would be intuitive. So yeah, and you reject
You
that
think
case,
that would be intuitive to most people?
in the field of philosophy who knows about logic, yeah.
Really? Do you have a poll for that?
Yeah, definitely. Poll? No, I don't have a poll for that specifically. I don't
Do you have
think
any
there's a
evidence
poll
for
on
that?
Just like, the evidence would be my intuitions on the matter.
So your intuitions on the matter about what other people believe?
Yep.
Why should we take that for granted? Me and the audience?
I'm not making the normative claim that you should take it for granted. I'm just saying it's evidence for the claim. So that's a blunder.
So you're saying it's evidence. I'm saying why should we take it for granted that it's evidence? Your kids.
So I'm not making the claim that you should take it for granted that it is evidence.
Is it evidence to us or just to you?
It is evidence insofar as what my claim is concerned, which is just to me specifically.
Is it evidence? So
I'm not
just
sure
to
if it's
you?
evidence. I'm not
Just
sure
to
if you believe
you?
it is evidence.
Is it evidence
Yes,
to any
evidence
of the
to me.
members of the audience?
I think it is evidence to any of the members of the audience, definitely.
You do think it's the case it's evidence to members of the audience?
Absolutely.
Okay. So you might have super autism, but we're going to go through this. Hopefully I can get you to understand. So when philosophers respond to Hempel's dilemma, do you think it's the case that they say that their reason for denying, you said this is your reason for denying Nico's criterion, by the way, is that correct?
Yeah, given how you formulated it, which involves the part we talked about them being the same.
You're confusing it because Nico's criterion isn't about the equivalency. Nico's criterion is a different premise. Nico's criterion is that when you observe an example of a black raven, this is the short form of it. When you observe an example of a black raven, you're observing evidence in favor of all ravens are black. That's Nico's criterion. Do you understand why you went wrong?
No, actually, because the way in which you formulated Nico's criterion is such that it would in fact be the case.
I actually never formulated Nico's criterion until just now.
Yes, you actually did.
No.
You're wrong.
So now I want to make sure you understand. Do you think it's the case that do you think it's the case that when you were talking about Nico's criterion, you were talking about something else than what I just said?
I'm talking about what you're talking about in this conversation when you referenced Nico's criterion. That's all I'm talking about.
Do you think that the thing that you were talking about is the standard account of what Nico's criterion is?
What thing do you think I was talking about there, just to be clear? Because I'm talking about several things in this conversation.
Answer me.
I'm asking you, what thing are you talking about when you're referencing that?
Nico's criterion. What you believe Nico's criterion to be throughout most of this conversation, do you think that's the standard account?
Okay, so I think that what you said is not the standard account because you forgot the other part.
Do you think the thing that you believe Nico's criterion to be for the majority of this conversation was the standard account, yes or no?
That I mentioned and you mentioned, no.
No. The thing that you thought Nico's criterion was for the majority of this debate, you did not understand what it standardly meant. You seem to think some other thing was Nico's criterion because you're a bullshitter. That was the first fuck up of the entire debate. That's what I make clear.
That was not the fuck up.
That's why I made clear that your approach for the rest of this discussion was going to be gibberating and avoiding discussing the actual subject. It became obvious at that point alone. That was the only one I needed to know exactly what you're doing.
Explicitly that it is the case Nico's criterion is just to say that positive instances of black ravens is evidence for black ravens or all ravens being black, correct?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding here. You think a black raven is that would be Nico's criterion? That would be one form of Nico's criterion, yeah. So what I'm going to ask you is, do you think it's the case that Nico's in ICOD, Nico's criterion? Yes, the answer was yes. Now, can you answer me without spazzing? Do you think it's the case that a black raven is
Incorrect.
If you were giving me your account of Nico's criterion, I was absolutely correct.
You fucked up.
That's the.
You fucked up.
Are you having a spastic meltdown? What I'm gonna ask you again, without you spazzing,
You're having a
is
panic episode
can
right now.
you try your best to address this directly?
This is just
Is it the case
what are you doing right
that
now?
a black
Look, you
raven
made a
is
claim.
evidence for the claim that all ravens are black? Yes or no?
Agreed to my question, which is me asking you if Nico's criterion is just to say that positive instances of black ravens is evidence for all ravens being black. That's not what Nico's criterion is in isolation. You're a dumb fuck. You forgot the other condition.
So I'm gonna go ahead and link you a source. I'm gonna link you a source.
You felt the debate, dude. What's going on?
I'm going to link you a source.
You're a fucking LARPer.
I'm going to link you a source because you're making a mistake, and I understand why you're making that mistake. You think the Nico's criterion is the modified version of it, it's extended. As I told you, the thing that you gave was a shortened version of Nico's criterion. I'm going to give you a source where Nico gives the same. Okay, let me know when you're done. Let me know when you're done.
Wait, you think the fuck up is me pointing out that this confirmation condition is also a part of Nikon's criterion, retard?
You done?
Yes or no?
I'm not answering your question until you answer mine.
Dipshit, answer.
No, you haven't answered any of my questions.
Okay,
so what I'm going to do
I've answered plenty of your questions. What are you talking about?
Okay, you done?
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to respond now, dumb fuck. Respond to the question. Yes or no?
So you gave, what you gave there was a shortened version of Nico's criterion. It's the same way that it's phrased. It's the same way it's paraphrased in Hempel. Right? That's the exact way you did that. It was the way it's paraphrased by Hempel, paraphrasing it from Nico. So that's the one that you gave with a shortened version. I can provide you a source for this. Would you like to see it?
How many more minutes is it going to take for you to realize you got fucked?
Would you like to see the source?
So I'm telling you right now.
Here's the source?
I mean, the question I asked you specifically was me saying,
Jesus.
Is it the case, and just walk with me, is it the case that Nico's criterion is just to say that positive instances of black ravens is evidence for all ravens being black? You're a dumb fuck retard.
That is a shortened form of it, yes.
Yes. Is the short version the same thing as the entirety of the criterion?
That's what I told you. I told you it was the shortened form.
You think it's okay? Just
it is the way it's phrased by Nico. I can give you a source. Would you like me to give you a source?
So there are two conditions of Nico's criterion. You have the confirmation.
I can give you a source where Nico phrases it like that.
And you have the condition about negative instances.
Tell me you're done.
And you will agree that that one condition out of those two conditions reflects Nico's criterion, which is composed of two conditions. You're a dumb fuck. That was a blunder. Now moving on to the other part, since you failed the pop quiz, you got an F. You got an F on your rhetorical and argumentative scorecard. So we're gonna move on, right? So now you failed the pop quiz session. We're gonna get back to the evidential equivalence part, dumb fuck. So,
really quickly before you move on, I want to say, is that thing right there? Because I answered your question. Is that right there? Is that right there? Nico's criterion. Is that right there? Nico's criterion.
Again and again and again. You have no sort of other.
Yes or no, Apollo? Yes or no, Apollo? Is that thing I just posted right there?
Explicitly.
Is that right there, Apollo?
Did you
remember
the parts of the conversation?
Okay, let me know when you're done.
You dodged my yes or no question.
You're getting upset. You're getting upset. You're getting very mad.
So let's not be critical here. I'm not upset. I'm just speaking with charisma.
You're very upset. You're not charismatic. You're embarrassing yourself.
Yeah, I'm so angry. Listen to my voice. I'm mad. Of course.
What the fuck is that shit? Is that the voice you put on when you're like flirting with the transgenders?
Use the psychoanalysis rhetoric, and it's just
look, buddy, relax. Okay,
I'm telling you right now, Sin.
Okay,
you cannot be trying to get me to answer your dumb fuck real yes or no question.
It's gonna be a ramble for like 9 hours.
When you explicitly dodged my yes or no question on the recording,
told you what the yes or no was.
You realized you're gonna fucked over. So I'm telling you right now that number one, you failed the pop quiz thing on the Nico's criterion. Number two is you failed to actually properly address the intuition point. And number three is you failed to justify why there would in fact be a logical contradiction in not believing that evidential equivalence is something which is logically entailed from two propositions being logically equivalent. So I'm gonna ask you again, do you have any sort of argument for this claim or no? Which one is it, retard?
So if I answer your question, I can ask you one, right?
He's doing the retard thing again. When is the artist gonna realize he's getting blown the fuck
out? Okay, Apollo, look, man. I'm gonna answer your. Yeah, kid. Let me know when you're done.
Give an argument. Let's go.
Okay.
The question from in Reddit is not gonna work, dude. Give an argument. Come on. I believe in you, son.
What you want an argument for? What proposition?
You forgot the proposition I asked for the argument for?
I'm asking you, what's the proposition? You're not doing well.
So I'm going to refresh your P-size the brain again, right? So piss brain lock-in, right? So the proposition I've asked
Genuinely, this is the most embarrassing display that Apollo's ever had in this VC. I think his goal is just to fill out the dead air for as long as possible. Apollo said that the following was not Nico's criterion. He said that the claim that all P's are Q is confirmed by the presence of Q in a case of P is not an example of Nico's criterion. I'm going to link you a source, Apollo.
And I'm trying to tell you the proposition, right? So just
I'm going to link you a source, and your retarded ass has no response to that source. It says explicitly that I was correct. Explicitly that I was correct in the first page. You've done no reading on this.
I want you to defend.
You've done no reading on this. You've done no reading on this. You've done terrible in this conversation. You're going to be made fun of. You're going to be made fun of by Phil Bros forever for this conversation.
The proposition that wants you to defend, and I want you to pipe the fuck.
I don't give a fuck what you want of this, bro.
So you can hear the proposition because you've asked me what the proposition is. So the proposition is to demonstrate the logical contradiction, right, from there being two props which are logically equivalent, even though they are not evidentially equivalent. What's the contradiction derived from that given statement?
So you think it's the case that in a hypothesis where one hypothesis is, I'm telling you. The contradiction is P and not P. Any contradiction follows from any contradiction.
This guy's a fucking retard. You think
any contradiction follows from any other contradiction?
From that particular point,
yeah, I can give you the argument for the contradiction, but if you ask me instead for a contradiction, right? Are you asking me for the argument for the contradiction? Or are you asking me for the contradiction? Because I can give you the argument for it.
Just to be clear, right? So I'm asking you, what is the contradiction from denying your claim?
So you're not asking for an argument anymore? You're not asking for an argument anymore?
That's your response?
So you're not asking for an argument anymore?
I want to make this really clear for not just you, but
God, who would this possibly convince?
From denying your claim.
Who would fall for this? Who's dumb enough to fall for this, Apollo? Who's dumb enough to fall for this?
Question, dude, please, just answer the question.
So would you like me to give you the argument?
Answer the question.
Would you like me to give you the argument?
Answer the question.
So yes?
Answer the question.
Okay. Will you be able to listen?
So your response to my question? Yeah, definitely. I'll respond.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you the response. Hopefully you can just listen. So Apollo.
Yes or no?
You ask. I thought you wanted the argument.
No, the current question is me asking you specifically. If you understand that when I was asking you for the contradiction.
No, I still think you're wrong.
Say the contradiction is P and not P.
No, I think you're still wrong.
Right.
No. So here's why.
So when I ask,
if you want the argument for the, oh my god,
wait,
who do you think is tricked by this meta debating shit? You're not actually talking about the topic in the slightest. Nobody's convinced by this.
Contradiction derived.
Nobody's falling for this.
Or denying the claim. You think saying P and not P is an adequate response?
So you've already asked this question. You're looping around the same meta points. Can we talk about the substance?
You're losing so bad on the optics. I suggest you to stop this dumb fuck strategy and just respond.
You're the one, dude. You're the one making a weird optical argument. I'm giving you substantive arguments. What you're doing instead is preaching.
So stop talking, right? So
Jesus Christ, what is it with literally every single person on this goddamn server? The same move where you just talk about the meta the entire time.
So
I can give you the argument if you want it. I can give you the argument if you want it, but I want to be able to ask you a question afterwards.
And then when you go back to the substance, you get blown.
Let me know when you're done.
I'm asking you right now.
Let me know when you're done.
If I'm asking you for the contradiction and denying the claim you're making, and your response is P and not P, do you think, given normal dialectical circumstances, that's an adequate response, retard?
Yes, I already answered this question. Do you think that asking the same question twice in a yes? The answer is yes. Good job. I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you agree. Glad you agree. When you specifically say that you don't want to hear the argument for the contradiction, you just want the contradiction itself, yes, that is an adequate response. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and explain to you what the argument is, and hopefully you'll understand it. So the argument that it's the case, that it's logically a contradiction, is that if it's the case that you accept P if and only if Q, and you accept that it's the case that you have evidence for P, then you are accepting that you have evidence for Q. Because of the fact that P if and only if Q, and P, therefore Q. So that would be a logically deductive argument in favor of the proposition that P if and only if Q, and also P, is sufficient condition for Q being true. I've given you the argument. You have no response to that argument. Now I'm going to give you an argument again about the thing that you said. I am going to ask you a question, and you're going to answer this question. Is it the case that Nico's criterion is that all P's are Q is confirmed by the presence of Q in the case of P? Yes or no? 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 Yes or no?
What's happening?
Yes or no? Yes or no, Apollo? Yes or no? Yes or no?
You think there's a mod fucking
yes or no?
Is the case, but someone has
yes or no?
For a contradiction.
Yes or no?
Expressed.
Yes or no?
From denying the claim.
Yes or no? Are you serious?
Yes
or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No, you're asking me a question.
Yes or no?
I ask you a question, if not even answer.
Yes or no?
You're doing
yes or no? Yes or no?
You have yet to respond to my question.
I give you a yes to your question, like 3 times in a row. Yes or no to my question.
I ask you another question afterwards, and
I don't give a fuck if you want to ask question number 5. I don't give a fuck. Answer my question.
So you're not gonna answer my question, gotcha, cool?
Correct. Answer my question.
Wonderful.
Answer my question.
My question came first. Answer mine first.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did.
No, my question came like 10 minutes ago.
You're a fucking retard. No,
I've asked you this question over and over again. You keep dodging with a question of yours.
Yeah, so
you're scared of this question.
You don't have proper recollection of what's going on in the conversation.
Christ.
The current question,
oh my God.
The current question that we're on right now.
So look, Apollo, if you're not gonna argue about the substance, if we're gonna only talk about meta, let's talk about the meta. Let's talk about the meta. So Apollo is a man who, on one hand, will claim that he thinks that transgenders are fucking sinning, but on the other hand, for some reason, Apollo seems to have a very specific proclivity for trans women. So let's see if we want to take a look at this video in the pop-out check. Since he's not going to engage with the substance, let's talk about the meta. Apollo is somebody who doesn't live up to his own principle. Let's see if Apollo is willing to engage with the fact that he hasn't lived up to his own principle. Let's go ahead and see if Apollo is able to live up to his own principles.
Because
let's see.
He's unable to actually.
He's getting very mad. He's getting very upset now. You're getting very mad. Look what we're going to do here, Apollo. We're going to go ahead and drop this in the pop-out. There we go. This video right here that I just posted in the chat.
We have a video right here. Can you address this video?
Look at this fucking shit in the pop-out chat. You posted this shit like 9 times in a row, bro. 9 times in a row, bro.
Just that video.
9 times in a row. Yeah, I can address that video too. Want to see it? Want to see the address?
What is that video, dude? 4 subs.
I'm doing what now? I'm doing what now?
You're saying unrecorded to fuck kids, and you're saying pedophilia is okay.
What are you talking about?
Look at the video, you dumbass, which got the 4 subs. Look at it.
It's a fucking edited video. You chopped a bunch of shit and it's got like fucking clear audio.
Dude. The synth strategy got back onto him. It goes off with the irrelevant allegations.
Hey, Apollo, man. Apollo, man. This edited video is not out.
On the allegations.
Oh, no.
You said pedophilia is okay, right? So we got this in the clip, and now you're going to call it
unironically hilarious. Unironically funny as fuck.
So now your own strategy got flipped back on you pedophile. You pedophile.
Unironically funny.
You said on the clip, you got ratioed in the chat, by the way. Let's not do this. It got ratioed.
You got me ratioed in the chat.
In the same edited
so what does that say? What does that say?
So, right. So
that's edited? The one that I posted?
Because you're a pedophilic apologist.
I don't know what that one, buddy.
Not only are you a pedophile, but you're also a victim.
Yeah, so this is what happens. This is what happens when people like Apollo lose the debate. What they want to do is make... Look how mad he's getting. Scream more, bitch. You can't do anything, pedophile. You can't do anything, pedophile. This is... Apollo's been caught several times. Apollo's been caught several times. Look how mad he's getting.
The substance. Let's get it.
He's so mad. By the way, Apollo.
Equivalence.
Look at how mad he's getting. He's having a meltdown.
Is the pedophile? Stop talking over me.
Apollo, did you say that you don't care if she's 15? Is that you?
What is
you don't care if she's 15, Apollo? Is that what you said?
What is the logical
Apollo's a pedophile, and he thought it was the case that if he went bad, he's going to get upset, he's about to start crying. He's going to start crying. In the future, you're not going to go to meta, are you? In the future, you're going to learn not to go to meta. You're never going to go to meta.
These are the smartest ways allegations.
He's so mad.
He's
having a mental episode.
What is the contradiction? What's the contradiction?
Hey, bitch. So I see here that the transgender is playing you. You were trying to have sex with this trans woman, because
express
you,
the
but privately behind closed doors. In spite of the
express the
fact that in public you
contradiction.
talk about how much you hate trans women,
Express the
privately
contradiction.
behind
What's the
closed doors,
contradiction
you
in two
have a
statements
get go,
being
get go.
logically
Get mad,
equivalent,
get mad,
even if they're
get
not
mad.
evidentially equivalent?
So
What is
follow.
the
You
contradiction?
claim to hate transgenders.
What
You claim
is
that
the
they're sinning, and yet
contradiction?
behind closed doors you try to have
What
sex with
is
them.
the
You
contradiction?
said, and I quote, "I bet your
What
moans are
is the
hot." You said,
contradiction?
and I quote, "Can you moan for
Yo,
me?"
chat,
This
spam,
is the third one
stamping
in a row, by
simp
the
and
way.
asking for the
Wasn't the first one
contradiction causes
Quark? Was the
derailing.
first one Quark?
Ben, what is the contradiction?
He's getting so mad.
What is the contradiction? That's the
He's so
17th
mad.
evasion from the Lotier. Let's see from the 18th try he might answer the question. Right, so what is the
This
contradiction,
is
Sim?
total
What is
Apollo
the
death.
contradiction?
Total Apollo
Sim,
death.
what is
Apollo,
the
calm down. Lock in,
contradiction?
lock in, lock in.
Sim,
Lock
what
in,
is the
bitch. Lock in like I told
contradiction?
you to.
What is the contradiction?
There you go. Good boy.
I accept the concession.
Okay, so
We
Apollo,
can get to
I'm going to
conclusions.
walk you through it, right?
We can get to
I'm going
conclusions.
to
I
walk
know for a
you
fact you got
through it.
demolished.
No,
We
you
can
think
get to
so?
conclusions.
Yeah, let's
I
do it.
know so. This is one of the most obvious W's of all fucking time. Holy shit, I'm so confident, bro. Bro, my freaking brains are popping right now. Bro. Let's set the conclusions. I got my freaking Dow Let's Go gold medals
Yeah,
around my
okay.
freaking neck
Look, man,
right now.
you
Just
wanted to move
showing
to
it off in the
conclusion?
freaking
Are we
horse
doing
ball.
closing statements or
Those
what?
rhetorical gold medals shining in your fucking face as you come to the realization and
So
the
corny.
epiphany that you'll never be as good as me. Let's set the conclusions. Let's go. Give your conclusions. You're trash.
Look, man, I'll let the I think the debate speaks for itself. Do you want to do a closing
I'll give
statement?
my conclusions. But I think it is unfair for me to give my closing statements and not you, so I'll just ask him to give your closing statements.
The debate's over, bro.
Okay, I'll give my closing statement for the recording, right? Because these is recorded. So my closing statement for the debate, of course, is simply that in the screenshot, which instigated this sort of altercation we're having right now, which he tried to derail from, right? So he was criticizing me for making the claim that it is the case that there's a conflation. He believes that's incorrect. Now, of course, the commitment that he made in this conversation is simply, if you have two statements which are logically equivalent, then that means it is the case that, necessarily speaking, they're evidentially equivalent. Now, of course, if you're making a necessity claim, you have to show a contradiction, and if not, if there's no
There's
contradiction
some video
demonstrated,
playing in the
then
background.
it is the case. Hold on,
Am I
let me just
crazy? Are
finish my
you hearing
closing
that?
statements, right? Let me finish my closing statements, dude. Just relax, right?
Yeah, bro, the
So,
debate's over,
of
man. I don't give a
course,
fuck
if
about the
it is
closing
the
statement.
case, these you can just
He's trying
turn
to
down
watch a
synth for the
video of somebody
recording.
else doing well in the
These
debate, so he
will
could
just
remind
turn
himself what it
down
was like.
synth for the recording, right? Because I'm gonna give my closing statements, right? Just mute them, right?
Okay, bro.
So to finish off, right? If you have two statements, his position is saying that necessarily speaking, they'll be evidentially equivalent. But of course, if he demonstrates no
Yeah, man, you done?
contradiction in granting two statements being logically equivalent, and again, not believing that they're evidentially equivalent, then there'll be evidence for the claim that it is possible for it to have two
Yeah,
statements which
alright,
are
bro. I got other
logically
shit to do.
equivalent,
You have a good one.
but
Peace,
are
peace.
not evidential equivalent. And so, with that being said, the very fact that he was unable and he has never demonstrated the contradiction is not just evidence for it being the case that his position is false, but also it being the case that I was correct on the matter. So, with that being said, this is my closing statements. He got blown the fuck out, of course. He got ripped out. And that's basically it. That was very easy, Synth. You're terrible.